Well, this is now the time where we begin with the business strategy game, and I assume by this point that you have a copy of the game and have also pulled down the player's manual. It's essential that you have that in hand before you proceed any further. You'll see on this slide that I say that this game is complex, and it's going to take you 2 or 3 days of hard study in order to get conversant with it, and you'll actually be learning as you go through the quarter. But by the end of the game, something that you're going to start off hating, you're going to end up loving and asking, how can we get more time to play it a little bit farther? You have to study the player's manual, and you got to read that thing twice. So if you haven't done it, that may be something you'll want to do before you go any further with these slides. But it's essential that you have some kind of a grasp as we go through some of the other aspects of the game. And what you do this next week in terms of really applying yourself, this is the time to put in the time to make sure you understand what we're going to be doing. This is going to set the pattern for the whole time that we're together. You've got to get off with an aggressive start on it. So get started on it early. If you haven't read it, be sure you do it before you proceed any further with the game, with the instructions on the game. Now, you're going to be playing in teams of 2. I have asked that you form up teams with the people that you know, and if you haven't done so up to this point, we'll do an assignment before this lecture is over and get you set up to work with a team. It's always going to be 2 people. I think there are 15 people in the class, so we may have one individual that either has to work alone or can join up with 2 other people for a team of 3. So to give you an idea of where you are with this, we're going to start, when we start off, we're going to start off with a company that's 10 years old and well respected. And you're going to have an opportunity to do one trial decision. A decision represents 1 year. And everyone begins at exactly the same point. The company is 10 years old, and you're going to be doing year 11 for this trial. After that, we're going to reset the game back to 0, and you have an opportunity then to do 8 live decisions over a period, since each represents a year, of 8 years. Moving on to the 4th slide here, what you're going to be managing. You're going to be managing a company that's operating in 4 different regions, in North America and in Asia. You'll be managing not only distribution, but also a factory that manufactures your product. The product in this case is athletic footwear. In addition, you'll be distributing into Europe, Africa, and into Latin America. And as the game goes along, some of you may choose to open up factories in those 2 locations as well. You're going to be having 3 channels of distribution. You have retail sales through dealers, you have internet sales, and you have the option of selling into a private label market. So a combination here of 4 geographic regions and 3 channels of distribution means you're going to be managing 12 different market channel combinations. If you move on to the next slide, you'll see that in year 10 you have, and everyone has exactly the same beginning point, $238 million in revenue and net profits of $25 million, which turns out to be $2.50 a share. Now what I want to have you do is to calculate how many shares are outstanding. This will be a little exercise for you to do outside of the game here. You have a return on equity of 17%. Can you figure out how much the equity is? It's a second little exercise for you to try. We're going to be doing a lot of arithmetic type calculations, and I want to get you started by looking at that. Your stock price is $30 a share, and you've got a B+ credit rating. And the company's well respected, in sound financial condition, and performing well. So that's where you're going to begin. On the next slide, you'll see that what you must learn from the player's manual. You're going to be making a total of about 150 decisions each round for this game. So, for example, in the production area, we have both branded and private label items with a total of about 10 decisions for each of those characteristics times 4 different locations, or that's 40 different production decisions that you make each round. Secondly, you'll have the opportunity to increase the size of your plant capacity, and this can be done either by buying a new plant, building a factory, doing plant upgrades, or plant additions, each of which will increase your capacity. So there are up to 6 decisions involved in that area each go-round. You have an opportunity to affect your worker pay, and this can be done either by increasing pay, and you're going to find in many cases that you'll get higher production if you kick up the wages by 25 or 50 cents an hour. Instead of having higher labor costs, you'll actually end up with lower unit labor costs because of higher productivity. And it's interesting that if you come in with a minimum wage job, you'll find you get one class of worker, but kick that price up 25 or 50 cents, and you'll have an entirely different class of worker and an entirely different workforce. You have 8 decisions that have to be made in the area of shipping. Your products are going to be coming in, maybe sold in the marketplace where they're manufactured, for example, in North America, or they may be imported or exported from that location to other locations. And you have to consider things like the fact that if you make product in North America to ship to Latin America, where your costs are going to be high in North America because our costs generally do run high, this still may be more favorable than buying product in Asia Pacific, where wages are lower and costs are lower, but there's the possibility of having to pay duty as you ship product from that Far Eastern location into Latin America. Of course, here, if we ship from North America to Latin America, there's no duties because you have NAFTA. So those are the kinds of decisions in the area of shipping that you have to consider. In pricing and marketing, there's up to 10 decisions for each of the 4 regional areas. You also have the opportunity, if you look at the next slide, to see that there are a chance to buy celebrities, and this becomes very important in operating the game. You have to have the celebrity appeal in order to build market share. And you got 2 decisions that have to be made on every celebrity: how much you're willing to pay for that endorsement and how long you're willing to buy it for. You have about 8 different decisions involved in the area of financing. You have an opportunity to buy stock if your price is low. You could use cash to do that, or you could take a loan out and use the loan money to buy in the shares. Or correspondingly, if your share price is, if you've got lots of cash, you may choose to retire outstanding debt. You can also make a choice of paying dividends, or of, well, that would be the big choice there, was to pay the dividends. And what this does, if you choose to pay dividends or choose to buy back shares, it will reduce your equity base, the size of the equity that's going to be used to figure out your return on equity. And that's important because you want to keep that return on equity high. You have an opportunity to spend money on corporate social responsibility and citizenship. Now, frankly, in my opinion, this is something that doesn't have a very high payout, but you want to do something. You want to make sure that the community realizes that you're involved in community activities, but don't overspend in that area because you won't get a high return. So it's kind of like one of those things that they talk about, satisfying factors and factors that actually improve the worker's capability, that satisfying and maximizing. And that's what you do with corporate social responsibility. You want to be there enough to make sure that you're known, but not spend too much money. You have to make a forecast of your annual sales and of your inventory position. And inventory clearance, is one of the key factors in making sure you have a solid business. If you add up all the possible decisions, there's about 150 that you have to make each time, and that's why it's critical that you study this game early and get a good level of understanding with it. Now, in terms of your market appeal, we have 10 different factors, and all of the pricing or all of the financial results will be based on these 10 factors. Price, the number of model styles, and recognize that a shoe in one style can have as many as 10 or 15 different sizes, and that represents then 10 to 15 unique model style combinations. You have an opportunity to affect the styling quality of your shoe, how the marketplace sees the shoe. Part of that will be a function of the advertising that you do and of the celebrity appeal that you have, as well as the basic composition of the shoe itself. You can spend money on advertising. The size of your dealer network becomes very critical. And if we pick one region, for example, when you begin this game, you have 3,000 retail locations in North America. And if you do a poor job, you may end up in 3 or 4 rounds getting down to maybe 1,800 or 2,000 retailers rather than 3,000. And you can't get more sales unless you got more outlets. So it's very important to keep that dealer network solid and keep it growing. You have the celebrity endorsements that I mentioned earlier. Delivery time becomes a factor in customer preference as well. If you're selling through a retail dealer, that dealer doesn't want to know that you've got inventory in the pipeline. He wants to know that the inventory is on his shelf. So you can pay more money as a shipper to get product to your retailer quicker, and that will make you more appealing to that retailer because he could sell what he's got on the shelf and he can't sell what's in inventory. Retailer support. We can just outright support the retailer directly. For example, if he buys a gross of shoes, we'll throw in an extra 10 pair. And this makes it more appealing for that retailer as well. And then you have the opportunity to use mail-in rebates. Now, mail-in rebates are really sleeves off your vest because most people will take that retail ticket, the rebate, and stick it in that drawer right below where you have the phone out in the kitchen, and they won't look at it again until the thing is expired. So it's a cheap way to give something to the customer that probably won't cost you anything in the long run. And then finally, you have an opportunity to determine what you'll do with shipping charges, because you do have the ability to sell over the internet, and you can either price the shoe that's sold over the internet as a delivered price, or you can do an add-on for shipping. And this is something that you'll just determine over time as to what the proper fit is for your marketplace. So all sales and market share differences are a function of the 10 items that I just mentioned. Now, how do we go about tackling the market? And by this point, I want you to be on slide 12. You have a number of different options. There is no built-in bias toward one particular strategy versus another. The one thing that you do have to do, though, is pick a strategy and then work with it. What I find as I've played this game, and I've done it many times now, is every game is different. And the kind of decisions that people make, how aggressive they are, how risk-averse they may be, how they select the strategy that they choose to follow will change the tempo and the competitiveness of each game. So just recognize that if all of you end up with exactly the same strategic approach, you'll end up splitting the pie rather than finding a unique place to operate. Now, if you will go to slide 13, I have some strategic ideas for you. Now, this comes from Michael Porter. Michael Porter has identified 3 different classic ways to approach the market. 2 of them are really applicable to this game. There are many other possibilities, but this seems to be the area. These 3 alternatives seem to be the area where people are most comfortable. And the first one is to use a low-cost, low-price approach where you minimize your costs and then reflect that in lower prices to the customers. This does not mean just cutting price. It has to be accompanied by the lower costs as well. The second one that you're likely to choose from, it would be a differentiated product. And here you're building in additional value for the customer, possibly through advertising or celebrity appeal, possibly by using better materials and giving retailers support. You can differentiate your product, and this is a second viable strategy. Now there's a third one, and this is a viable strategy as well, but very difficult to implement in this game. And that is a best value for the money, and that's where you both have lower price or lower cost, but also work to differentiate the product. And we will talk about the first two in some detail, but I'll postpone looking at that third alternative until later in the course. As you do this, you have the opportunity either to be a market leader in retailing, that is selling to retailers, in selling online, or a combination of the two. You're going to have to kind of pick your way along and see what fits your particular presentation style the best. And then finally, you have an opportunity to sell into the private label market. And with private label, of course, you're dealing with very large buyers who have an awful lot of buying power and who can force your price down to very low levels. We'll talk about that as well, but that's a separate element in disposing of extra capacity you have rather than as a mainline strategic approach. So at this point, I'm going to take a break because I want you to get in front of you another file. This is out under instructions, and it's called BSG reports, because I'm going to look at detail in some of the reports you get on from the game, and I want to have you be able to see it well rather than on the screen, but have it in your hand. So if you'll get that copy of that file, we can then go ahead with the next element.